Alright, so with our motor test rig complete, we got everything on here to be a mini dyno except for a way to measure the actual torque, but I can check the torque on things as a comparison. We're ready to do some testing on the dual carbs to see how the dual carbs do on all of the things with exhaust temperature and the air fuel ratio, the vacuum, all of that, and then we got pump load over there. We're going to be able to check those and compare them to our two different versions of a single carb intake. This is one that's got unequal runners, and then I made one out of stainless that has equal runners. So we're going to be able to check against these and compare all these numbers to finally see, does a single carb intake act like a dual carb, or does it imbalance the cylinders? Do they get hotter? Does it throw the air fuel ratio off, etc.? So let's get set up here with some test parameters, and we're going to see what we're going to test. Alright, so here's our test plan of our stock OE carbs versus the single carbs, and then we're going to run equal and unequal runner on the manifold. So first test we're going to do, we're actually going to compare torque, but like I said, I can't measure torque, but I can compare torque on things because I can pull up a certain RPMs and then I can load the motor with the power steering pump, and what it'll do is bring the RPMs down. So we all know that the more power you got, the more torque you got, your RPMs will stay up better because you got more torque. So what I'll be doing is actually comparing how much it drops the RPMs when I put that pump load on there from the power steering pump. So that'll be one test we're going to do, and we're going to set up and do all these tests, and then we're going to switch out carburetors because I got a single that's a stock carburetor for the first gens, and those that are on it are stock duals. So I'll be able to go one for one on the carburetors. I'll also use the air intakes that I have over here on this single carburetor. That way I take out any variable of how much air is coming in, all of that kind of stuff, and I can just test and see what the manifolds do. Because a lot of cases people say that switching over to a single carb gives them more horsepower or gives them more bottom end torque, things like that. So we want to be able to determine that one for one. Is it actually the manifold doing it, or is it the fact that they took all the stock air off of the bike, switched over to a single carb, and now they're getting so much more airflow, they're getting more bottom end torque. So keeping the same carburetor and keeping the same amount of air flowing in is going to tell us if the manifold is doing it or if it's the carb swap. So then next on the list, after we do our torque comparison, like say I'll set up on the duals, get all these measurements, I'll record them on the video, then I'll change over to the other carb, do the very same test, and then I'll change the manifolds and do the very same test. That way I can put it all together at the end and we can get a summary and see if anything changes. So the second part of the comparison is actually I want to watch the exhaust temps to see if the cylinders are hotter or colder. And you'll see on the gauges that the front cylinder reads different than the back cylinder, but it's the placement of my thermocouples in the exhaust. So I can't really compare front to back, but I can compare front for a dual to front for a single, etc., and then do the same for the back. Then I also want to watch the manifold vacuum. You'll see over here when I'm running it that the manifold is stable because I balanced these carbs. I got it all adjusted in, they're synced up, everything looks good on that. I'm also going to monitor air fuel ratio because I got an air fuel ratio gauge on there with O2 sensors, and so I'm going to try to keep it a little bit rich, run around 11 to 13. I don't want to get up into 14s on this thing because my motor's not going down the road. I got a big old fan back there that I'm going to blow on it, but I still don't want to lean out too far on this thing. And then fuel consumption, it's going to be interesting, but I actually have a little bottle up there that has graduations on it, so I can measure how much fuel I run in a certain amount of time. I know what gear I'm in, so all I got to do is compare that to the speed that my stock bike runs down the road in that gear at that RPM, and it's going to be able to convert over to a miles per gallon measurement on my fuel consumption. And then at the last down here, these are the measurements. We're just going to run it at 3,000 RPMs in second gear for this test. For the big load test, I'm going to run it 3,000 and 3,500 RPMs in fourth gear. That's really going to pull the motor down to see if those RPMs will drop. So let's get set up over here, and we're going to do our first test, which is the torque comparison. And all I really want to watch on that one is the RPM gauge. The rest of the stuff doesn't matter. Then I'll switch over, and I got my GoPro set up to watch some of the smaller gauges so we can see how it goes during the testing. Alright, so for the first test, just check torque. It's a pretty simple one. All we're going to do is fire the motor up, and then I'm going to put it up in 4th gear. You'll see the pump start turning, then I'll pull the clutch in, get the clutches to break free, and then we'll rev it up to 3,000. I'll let the clutch out, and we'll see how much the RPMs go down. So we got our gas on, we got everything on, so let's fire it up. Now we're back in neutral. We got to fill our little gas thing up. What I want to get it up to is a marker, and then I'm going to measure the time with my phone, the distance from the marker to the marker. That'll allow me to calculate miles per gallon. Alright, so for our second test, what we're going to do is start it up and put it in 2nd gear. Then I'm going to run it up to 3,000 RPMs, and then I'm going to measure fuel. So when it hits this line right up here, then I'll be able to start my timer and watch how much fuel comes down, how long it takes. Then I can calculate miles per gallon as well as watching all the gauges. So the GoPro's watching these gauges because they're a little hard to see. So let's get going here and see what we got. All right, so from that, we should be able to see what all of our measurements were, and then we can compare that to the single carb ones. We got our time, so it took 2 minutes and 14 seconds to run out 100 milliliters of fuel. So then we can calculate our miles per gallon off of that, and it'll get set up here, and we'll change these carburetors out and put our single manifold on and see what we got. Alright, so we got the dual carbs off, we're done with the testing for them, and we got our single carb installed, and this is the one with the unequal runner.